All right. So next we have longtime Gemmer, our NOAA liaison, and chief scientist at NOAA, Howard Singer.
Thank you very much, Christine. And thank you to the organizing committee. And I'm really enjoying being here again. I think I've been at every GEM for the past 33 years that Shaylin mentioned, except for 2. So maybe you don't want to clap. There were 2 I missed. So anyway, I'm really glad to be here again. GEM is my favorite meeting. Well, maybe not the favorite meeting. Space Weather Workshop is all really my favorite meeting. So I'm here today to talk to you about what highlights of NOAA activities. Now, being from the Space Weather Prediction Center, you might expect that I'm going to tell you what's going to happen next year. But really what I'm going to talk about, a little bit of that, but I'm going to talk more about what's happened in the past year. So one of the things is our mission statement you can see at the bottom here. It's about safeguarding society with actionable space weather information. And part of that information comes from you, the GEM community. So that's why it's so important to have these GEM meetings and other activities. Let me see if I can find the right way to move forward here. There we go. Okay, so I like to open these presentations with some highlights of what's happened. What are the impacts that have happened in space weather in the past year that make the work that we all do so important? And so a few months ago, I picked out this event in December 14th of 2023. It was a flare and a solar radio burst event that occurred. And that event was, as I said in the first bullet here, was an amazing event, likely one of the largest solar radio events ever observed. And during this event, you can see on this picture here, you can see our D-region absorption plot, which covers the Earth and shows the area of highest impact due to solar X-rays and the impact on HF communications. But the solar radio burst produced additional impacts, and the radio communication interference with aircraft were reported by multiple National Weather Service Center Weather Service units and that are co-located with FAA facilities. And these this was really quite an impactful event, and it's partially because it was December. The sun is low on the horizon or low in the sky. And so the communications between the radio communications between the aircraft control and the aircraft are going to often or sometimes be in the line of sight of the ground to the aircraft or the aircraft to the ground. And so this was so severe that if it had gone on much longer, they were talking about shutting down some of the airspace. So space weather was really important during this event. Well, this is what I was thinking about talking about as an impact of space weather, but then we had this May 10th and 11th large geomagnetic storm. And during that storm, it's already been talked about here many times, but this was the largest storm in 2 decades since the Halloween storms. And I think the impacts of that storm are still being assessed. We're still getting reports about impacts, and we heard impacts about power grid irregularities, degradation to high frequency comm, GPS interference, and lack of accuracy of GPS. So there are a lot of impacts, and I think we're still learning about some of those. But what's additionally interesting is that during this event, social media reached out to more than 7.3 million people. So it's incredible. I don't know about you, but when I get on an airplane and somebody's sitting next to me and I talk to them, often they know something about solar flares and coronal mass ejections. It's amazing how that's getting into the community, into the population. And so people are understanding it. And the aurora were observed, in, as far as I know, in all 50 states, except I just heard, maybe not in the District of Columbia. So I will remember that. There are, but for this event, we had a lot of new models available that helped the forecasters. The forecasters gave out really good advanced warning of multiple CMEs headed towards Earth, and people were able to prepare better, I think, than ever before. So in some sense, this was perhaps, as far as we know now, maybe the most successfully mitigated space weather storm in history. And that's because not only were we good with the observations and models and information we convey, but also because those who are impacted are more aware of space weather and what can happen to their systems and to their operations. And just to highlight a couple of the models, thinking about the GEM community, this is not just GEM, but CEDAR and SHINE as well. But the models that have come out of the research community that were available to our forecasters to give them guidance during this event included the Wang-Shili-RG-Enlow model for when the background solar wind and when coronal mass ejections were going to hit Earth, the whole atmosphere model, which gives information about satellite upper atmosphere density and satellite drag, the geospace model from the University of Michigan, global TE, total electron content model, and the geoelectric model. So none of these were available during the Halloween storms. And turning more and thinking about other information that people are interested in the long term, we, of course, a lot of interest in the solar cycle and how active it's going to be. This shows a picture from 2020 to 2032. Each of the past couple solar cycles, NASA has supported and NOAA has organized a solar cycle prediction panel, and predictions of the when solar min, solar max, how big it's going to be have been put out. And on this picture here in the pink sort of area, the faded sort of pink area, you can see what the solar cycle prediction panel put out for this current cycle, and also with error bars involved. That's why it's a very broad area. But customers really want to know not what we predicted 6 years ago, but what's happening now and what's the prediction. And working with Mark Misch at our place, he has put into place a new prediction model, which takes into account past solar cycles as well as where we are in the current cycle. And that's shown in the upper trace here in the upper plot. And it shows that the solar cycle 25 is exceeding what the prediction panel put out and is becoming much more active by that index. So this is on our testbed site, which before it goes into the main site at Space Weather Prediction Center. So look for the testbed Space Weather Prediction Center site, and these figures will be available to give you the links to go to that. Also, in terms of the solar cycle, you can see it here from 2000, I guess it is, to the present time, and that's the black line trace here. And so you can see that, and it also shows here, so that's the solar cycle, but it also shows the number of customers, the active customers that have subscribed to a subscription service that we have. The main point I want to make on this figure is that we normally have about 400 new subscribers per month. In May of 2024, when we had this large event, we had 4,800 new subscribers, so 10 times the average number of subscribers to Space Weather. One of the ways that we are able to provide the customers with warnings and with information about space weather events is through the observation program. And we're fortunate that within NOAA, El Sayed Talat, who many of you know from his previous work with NASA, has established within NOAA a space weather observation program. In the past, we had space weather observations for the past 50 years, but we've been a ride along with the terrestrial GOES satellites, for example. And now we have a space weather observation program within NOAA that, and so we have the current program, and there's things coming that I'm going to talk about in a minute with new programs that are being worked on through our sister agency. I'm with the Weather Service, El Sayed Talat, and the sister agency for observations is the National Environmental Satellite Data Information Service, NESDIS. So the program of record that we currently have, which is the current satellites, the satellites that are coming in the near term, include things like Discover at L1, the space weather follow-on mission at L1, which is going to be launched, as you just heard from Joe, will be launched next year. And today, there is a launch of the last of the GOES-R series, GOES-U. And when GOES-U gets on orbit, it will be GOES-19. And that's very exciting for us and for the whole community, because one of the things it's going to have is a new instrument on it, which is called CCOR, the compact coronagraph. So we'll have our first operational coronagraph from NOAA on this CCOR mission. It will be also on the SWIFO L1 mission. And this lists a few of the other missions that are in the program of record, including working together with ESA on the Vigil mission to go to L5. Now, all of this data comes back from these NOAA missions, and it has to go somewhere and then be distributed to the community. And one way that happens is through the National Centers for Environmental Information, which is in Boulder, in the same building we are in the Space Weather Prediction Center. And they have made tremendous advances. I got this, I should say, from Ali Piccini at NCEI. And this figure just shows all of the different data sets that they support and make available to the community. They do reprocessing of observation of data as you learn new things, as you put in new calibrations to make the best data, science data available to the community. And there is a link to that here. And so it's a really great new way of getting at the space weather data. And they're doing work, which is I'm really impressed with. It's called a Space Weather Portal. You can see SPOT. And SPOT is a new program that they have for making available data to the community. It's going to start with data from the SWIFO L1 mission, but then it's going to expand to include all of the GOES data and other data that I mentioned. And that data, as you see on the right, is going to be stored in the cloud. It's going to produce summary plots that are going to be available to the community, dynamic plotting capability, various ways to download the data, including APIs. So this is something coming, and I think it's going to be really important. I also then want to move into the what's going to come next, the after space weather follow-on and the other missions I described. And there will be continuing observations to L1 to make measurements there, but also cooperative programs and partnerships to get L5 data, to get data perhaps from L4, and perhaps in other orbits as well, such as LEO, medium Earth orbits, and off the Sun Earth line. I think that's the same. So, well, I mentioned Space Weather Workshop, and we had a really hugely successful meeting this past year. Space Weather Workshop is co-sponsored by NSF and our NASA partners. We had over 530 registered participants, and so that was a record for us. It included 58 students. We had a remarkable student program. The student program was organized by two of our folks here, Bhagyashri and Vincent Ledvina. And I don't know if you're here, if you want to raise your hands so people can find you, but they put together a really fantastic student program that included sessions on citizen science, AI, diversity, speed mentoring program, which was really exciting. And so that's been really good. And also, as was mentioned, we really pay attention okay. I can go forward, but not backwards. There we go. So we really pay attention to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, both in terms of our organizing committee and in terms of the speakers who were invited and present at the meeting. So we've had a lot of success at Space Weather Workshop. The next year's meeting will be a month earlier than usual. It's going to be in March 17th to 21st are the tentative dates. They're still signing agreements with the hotel. but those are probably the dates that we're going to have the meeting next year. Just some highlights from the meeting. I won't read these all, but there was a lot of attention paid to the Pro-SWIFT Act, to how various agencies are implementing actions from the Pro-SWIFT Act, a lot on space weather implementation plan, the observing and modeling, workforce development, which has become a really popular and interesting component of our meeting, and special presentations on a whole variety of topics, including human exploration. And it was again just a lot of content. But really, what this meeting is so important for, I think, is bringing together people from diverse communities involved with the space weather enterprise. There have been a lot of space weather exercises. We've had 2 at NOAA, and there was also recently a federal an exercise for federal response and recovery and operations and plans and procedures for space weather that was organized by Johns Hopkins University APL. And it was during this meeting, you can see the dates there, May 8th and 9th, where they're conducting an exercise, but hearing word that there's a big event about to occur. So it became reality TV, I guess. In terms of policy, there's been a lot of activities in the past year. The National Space Council, which is chaired by the Vice President, put out the implementation plan of the National Space Weather Strategy and Action Plan. And that was based a lot on community input, including work from the Space Weather Advisory Group, SWAG, and which brings in input from academia and commercial and users. And just one quote I wanted to mention here from the White House is that we are committed to improving national preparedness for space weather, and that commitment remains constant and is in fact more relevant and important than ever. So we're getting a lot of attention at the highest levels of government. There are a lot of actions in the Space Weather Action Plan, implementation plan, and these are just a few of those that NOAA is responding to. And the first one is actually more than NOAA. It's a quad agency memorandum of agreement to implement research operations and operations to research. It involves Department of Air Force, NSF, NASA, and NOAA. So there's a lot involved with our partnerships. There's a space weather prediction test bed, which is called for in the implementation plan. And that plan, it says here, build out of the test bed at our facilities in NOAA has begun. Well, now it's almost complete. And a key component of that is really to bring together forecasters, customers, developers, researchers, all in one place in order to advance our ability to provide new and improved space weather capabilities. In addition, you may have heard that the space weather scales, which has been around for about 25 years, is being evaluated for possible changes to how we express space weather to users and the broader community. And that is an effort which is being led by the Space Science and Technology Policy Institute, and is an ongoing effort which is going to take about 2 years to complete, but hopefully will result in understanding levels. Well, let me give a couple examples. One thing is a G5 event is KP9. Well, there's various gradations of KP9, and that's really important to the electric power industry. So that is something that needs some attention and looking at. Another thing is how we explain space radiation effects. When you say radiation to an airline and say it's a severe radiation effect, or to astronauts, they really need to know a little bit more than just hearing those words, because there's various ways you need to be able to react to whatever is happening in the environment. So all of these things are being examined for possible improvements. And the space weather benchmarks that were looked at by this community are also being evaluated. I wanted just to end by saying that research to operations is one of the most important things because that's what's going to give us our new capabilities. There was recently an excellent talk given by Eric Adamson at the CCMC workshop that's online and available, which goes through all of the various steps of going from basic research to some new tool or capability in operations. I highly recommend looking at that. But as I said in the beginning, our job is to provide actionable space weather information and improvements and bringing in new models and tools through this process. Going from basic to research to operations is going to give us those new tools and capabilities. Thank you.
Hi, Howard. It's great to hear about looking at the new metrics for different storms and things like that. But I have a question. So the Kyoto sites that usually give us DST and AE and AL and those that are often used for models and for a lot of research that is then tried to, move into operations, those aren't being updated as much. And I'm not sure that they're going to be continuing. Does NOAA have an interest in helping to provide a similar form of DST or SIMH and the Auroral indices? I know some of the German groups are doing that as well as others, but what's your outlook for those proxies?
So thank you. First of all, it's new information to me that some of those may be discontinued. I didn't know that. I'll have to talk to you about that some more. I think those indices have really important information. So I don't know of any plans right now, but we should hear more. We do put out a Potsdam puts out KP officially, and they also have some interesting tools for making predictions. And we also, from the geospace model, for example, we get short near-term KP predictions. DST and AE, I don't know of any plans for us to do that, but I'll like to talk to you some more.
Yeah, you touch on some companies involving in space weather, and so I have generic question I like to ask earlier. That is because space weather is such an area where there might can be a lot of public-private partnership, and you see the commercial sector involved here. So I wonder if you may have some thoughts or suggestions about in the future what the GM or space weather community might be able to benefit from the commercial sector, for example, like leveraging the resources that they may provide.
So, thank you for that question. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for the commercial sector. One of the ways, and I didn't mention it, that the commercial sector participates and collaborates with NOAA is through observations, providing observations. So for example, Cosmic TUE satellite provides ionospheric information from from near equatorial sort of orbits, but there's a commercial sector which is doing polar orbiting and providing observations that are being evaluated by NOAA. So I think there's opportunities through data. There's opportunities, certainly. Well, first of all, you should talk to Janet Green here. I'm sure she can help you. And I should also mention that we're going to, as Shaylin mentioned, we're going to miss Jen Gannon because she was really important player in the American commercial space weather activities. So I think if there's just so many things that the commercial sector can do to work with tailored information to space weather users that we don't do at NOAA. And so I think there's growing opportunities for commercial.
Just a quick comment. I'm sure you must know this, but the GOES launch is live on YouTube on Spaceflight now, and it's the launch time is intended obviously to coincide with our posters tonight because it's at 7:16. So
great, thank you for that update.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, we're gonna have to move on now. So thank you so much, Howard.